Good evening, America. Welcome to your Tuesday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you, as always, from Washington, D.C. It is an extraordinary 24 hours that we're in the middle of right now. Tomorrow, Hunter Biden will testify before the House impeachment inquiry of his father. Today, House Oversight Chairman James Comer and Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan issued a subpoena in that very investigation. This one went to Merrick Garland, seeking documents from Special Counsel Robert Hur's investigation into President Joe Biden's handling of classified materials. What are they looking for? The actual classified materials that Joe Biden kept in his possession that might have been of value to his son's investigation. Those two things are going to collide, I think, in tomorrow's marathon questioning session. Now, meanwhile, down in Fulton County, an extraordinary day of testimony. The lawyer for the chief prosecutor in the Trump case here couldn't remember anything about when his client and Fonnie Willis may have had the beginnings of an affair, which has now been acknowledged by both, but not clear when it began. The judge looked exasperated at times today as Terrence Bradley testified. Pretty extraordinary moment there. Now, we have a lot more headlines we're going to get to in the next hour, but we got a super first guest that we want to make sure we get all time with. Congressman Lee Zeldin is going to join us in a second. Before I go to him, let me just bring my extraordinary co-host, Amanda Head, in. She's down in Phoenix covering the Strong Church Dream Conference 2024, hosted by TPUSA and the Dream City Church. Amanda, how things in Arizona?
It's incredible, man. Some amazing, amazing people, pastors, churchgoers here. It's incredible, and I know we want to get straight to Lee Zeldin, but I actually took a few interviews earlier that I think we're going to try to save and use on the show later this week, so I just want to tease that, and everybody make sure that you tune in, and we're going to have coverage here for the rest of today and also tomorrow until this conference is over, so make sure you stay tuned to Real America's Voice. All right, there's my plug.
How about that? That was good. I can't wait to see who you got in interviews. That's going to be fun. All right, with so many amazing things going on, Congress exercising its oversight in a very serious impeachment inquiry now, I thought I'd bring in one of the most extraordinary investigators I got to meet in Congress over the years. He's the former Republican candidate for New York governor and current chairman of the America First Policy Institute's Project 24, which is its big agenda for the next president. Joining us right now, former Congressman Lee Zeldin. Congressman, good to have you on the show today.
Oh, it's great to be with both of you.
Little election tonight called the Michigan primary. It's interesting because it's the first battleground to have a primary. What will you be looking for in Joe Biden's numbers and in Donald Trump's numbers tonight?
Well, with regards to the Democrats, we'll see what the uncommitted vote looks like. Rashida Tlaib tried to organize as many as she could to vote against Joe Biden, to send a message to Joe Biden. President Biden's handling of the Israel conflict post-October 7th has been one that has caused him a special amount of heartburn inside of Michigan because he has a good amount of his prior base wanting to see President Biden supporting the Hamas position, calling for a ceasefire, even though there's no message coming from those activists with regards to the hostages. It's caused this White House a problem, not just on the policy, but as we're seeing here politically. So is that non-committed number going to be a number that's into the double digits? Or is it going to be something that flamed out and comes well south of expectations? For President Trump, the polling has shown him several dozen points up. I'm expecting to see a very big win from President Trump today. It also will be interesting to see how many Michigan voters who are not supportive of President Trump are deciding not to cast their vote for Nikki Haley either. Because in some states where you have Trump versus Haley, people who do not want to vote for President Trump are voting for Nikki Haley as their only alternative. But here in Michigan, there is that opportunity to be able to vote without committing to either of them. And I feel like Nikki Haley's vote so far, her vote tally in some of these early states, have included people who are trying to cast protest votes to Trump, but don't necessarily care much for Haley. I think that exists in these states like South Carolina, where Democrats can vote, in New Hampshire, where non-Republicans were able to vote. Sure. We'll see what that uncommitted amount looks like in Michigan.
Yeah, that's going to be a telltale, no doubt.
I think that's absolutely right. And it's something that Republicans in Michigan should be cautious about, because Nikki Haley, those votes will dissipate going into the general if they in fact were protest votes. I want to stay on the topic of elections, though, because obviously we are all looking forward to November, but there have been a number of special elections that have taken place. One in New York on Long Island to replace George Santos, and it ended up being lost to the Democrat. It was a guy who had a lot of name recognition in that area. But for Republicans in the state of New York, was there a lesson learned? Because there was plenty of money behind Mazi Pilip. What were the lessons learned from that, or not learned?
There was a lot of money behind Mazi Pilip's campaign. There was even more money behind Tom Suozzi's campaign, as you pointed out. Name recognition of being the prior congressman in that area. He is somebody who is a career politician. He's been through many debates. He's done a lot of public speaking. He had a number of advantages, including a voter registration advantage as well. When you are voting in the middle of February for a federal race, the reality is that none of the people you're reaching out to on either side of the aisle have ever voted in a congressional race in the middle of February. In this particular situation, we saw the migrant crisis emerging as a bigger issue. I think that Suozzi was trying as well as he could to deflect attention off of President Biden and try to instead put the blame on Congress. And listen, I think that for Mazi Pilip, it was a risk in running her. She is a proven vote getter in a Democrat area. She is a registered Democrat. She is somebody who has since changed her registration to Republican, but that was after the special election had taken place. And I also think that there's a dynamic with some of the press that was coming out during the race, questioning whether or not she had even voted for President Trump, how strongly she was going to support President Trump if elected. And if you're running in one of these special elections and you need to turn out supporters of President Trump, that message can't get sent to them that you are not being supportive of the person who is at the top of your ticket running for president this year. So that's just a brief recap of some of the higher level components. The reality is I could think of 100 things to help answer the question. But I would say for anyone running in a special election anywhere in America, the get out the vote operation, the organization, it's all key. In this case, there was a snowstorm that hit on special election day. For 7 hours. It impacted the get out the vote operation. We saw this in Nevada in 2022, where Republicans were not leaning into ballot harvesting, which was legalized, and early voting. And then it ends up costing us a Senate seat when a snowstorm hits Reno. So a big lesson for Republicans nationwide, where they have legalized early voting. It's important that we get out, especially low propensity voters, make sure that they vote early. If they've legalized ballot harvesting, Republicans need to ballot harvest better than the Democrats, to the extent that the Democrats end up regretting legalizing it in the first place. I would say that's one of the key lessons when that snowstorm ended up hitting yet again here in this special election. Yeah,
you are right over the target on that. That is going to be the key in November, is who can muster a good early vote where it's allowed to be done. So I want to turn to Hunter Biden. It wasn't that long ago when guys like you and I were called conspiracy theorists for suggesting that maybe the Bidens had an influence peddling operation in Ukraine and elsewhere. Now most Americans see it for what it is. What should Republicans be focused on tomorrow to get out of Hunter Biden? He's going to bring all of his tricks and games and charade. What do you think they can potentially accomplish here tomorrow?
Hey, let's not overthink it. The left keeps saying there's no evidence. It's important for Republicans to show up with the receipts.
Yeah.
They've done the subpoenas. They've gotten the financial records. They have emails, texts, laptop, videos. They've done some other depositions. They have Hunter's own statements. There have been Freedom of Information Act requests that have produced information as well. Show up with the receipts. Question Hunter Biden on the documents that you can't dispute are accurate, because here is your WhatsApp message, Hunter. Here is a quote from a video of your voice. This came from your laptop. When you're showing up, this is a bank record of a transaction for one of your companies. We should not overthink it. The narrative of the left going into tomorrow is that there is no evidence. Show up with the receipts and ask some really great questions, making your questions and the time count to be able to get answers for the American people.
Yeah, very smart.
You know, I know they accuse both of you of wearing tinfoil hats, but I think that's still better than wearing blindfolds, which seems to be what they are doing with respect to all of this Biden nonsense.
True.
Sir, before we let you go, I wanted to ask you, there's an interesting dynamic in the Jewish communities of both New York and also places like Los Angeles. And, Hasidic Orthodox Jews typically vote more conservative, but you have a huge cultural Jewish base in New York City and Los Angeles. But a new Siena poll from last week showed that Jews across the board in New York now support President Trump 53% to 44% for Joe Biden. Do you think that is a result of what happened on October 7th of last year? Or is this something that there's been a groundswell towards for a long time?
Yeah, I think that there has been a groundswell for a long time. There's been a lot that's happened over the course of the last few years. I saw members of the Persian community in Northwest Nassau County. They're from Iran, upset in 2015, 2016 with the Iran nuclear deal. I've spoken to voters who were upset with attacks of anti-Semitism when a rabbi in Lower Hudson Valley ends up getting stabbed to death on Hanukkah a few years ago. We have seen these moments emerge where people have chosen to get more active because of something that might happen in their community or something they're following that is a national issue, or certainly October 7th is an issue as well. If your kids are going to one of these colleges where there's a blatant anti-Semitism on the campus and advancing the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, that will get you active. When you see the state education department and the governor in New York going after yeshiva education and no one's defending it in a coordinated hit with the New York Times, that'll get your blood going, and that will get you maybe active for the first time. So it has been a culmination of so much. The last thing I would say is this. President Trump, when he was in office for 4 years, he got rid of the fatally flawed Iran nuclear deal. He moved the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. He signed the Taylor Force Act into law, recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, launched the Abraham Accords, signed an executive order to combat anti-Semitism on college campuses here at home. There are so many other factors we can analyze that would explain why so many Jewish voters are gravitating to President Trump. We cannot forget about everything that President Trump himself did during 4 years in office.
Yeah, the record contrast is really clear. So we got about 40 seconds left. Just real quickly, the border, it's impacting us all. We see Lincoln Riley this weekend and go, how can we allow this to happen? What's your best advice to Republicans to start winning this debate?
Listen, President Biden proved that he has the power to open the border. That also proves that President Biden has the power to close it. Members of Congress can talk about different solutions regarding legislation and laws for the future. But the fact is that President Biden stopped construction of the border wall. He got rid of Title 42 without a replacement. He ramped up catch and release. He got rid of Remain in Mexico. He attacked our Customs and Border Patrol agents. All the pressure should be on President Biden to use the powers of his office, going after Mayorkas, going after the border czar, Kamala Harris. All of them need to step up and actually lead. Congress can have their debates. They'll always have their debates. But President Biden today has the power to close the border.
That he does. Congressman, it is always an honor to have you on. We always get straight talk and clear answers, and we certainly appreciate that. We miss you here in Washington, I'll tell you that. Great to have you on today.
Thank you both.
Thank you. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. But on the other side of those messages, we'll be talking about the tragic death of Lincoln Riley on the University of Georgia campus with a congressman from the Peach State who has been calling out local officials for turning Athens, Georgia into a sanctuary city. We'll have that right after these messages with Congressman Mike.
Welcome back, everybody. There is a reason that immigration is now the #1 issue that voters are going to the polls for. And there are a number of members of Congress who are very vocal about this, but one of them who seems to always be spitting the truth from his seat on Capitol Hill is Georgia Congressman Mike Collins. Congressman, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Well, thanks for having me.
Sir, we see the devastating effects of illegal immigration in practically every sector of American society. And news broke this weekend the devastating story of Lincoln Riley on campus at the University of Georgia. And this is something that, you have an extreme expertise on because of being in that state. But, Georgia's not a sanctuary state, but you've spoken on Twitter and in interviews about how Athens, Georgia, in Clark County effectively acts as a sanctuary sanctuary city. And this act, this heinous act, was committed by an illegal immigrant. Do the parents on that basis alone have grounds to sue?
Well, I think that's a very good question. I know one thing. I would want to know if my child was attending school in a sanctuary city, because I guarantee you there's tens of thousands of young people that are in Athens, and I guarantee you their parents don't know that. And I don't care what the mayor is sitting there saying. If you're just because you say we're not a sanctuary city and you're acting like one and you're on the list for sanctuary cities, you're pretty much a sanctuary city. This not turning these people into ICE and retaining them for 48 hours would have been all that we needed to apprehend and keep this guy behind jail before he did what he did.
Absolutely. And sir, I know you ran a poll on Twitter that you wanted exclusively for parents, former and current parents of Georgia students, and you asked them how many of them knew that on campus at the University of Georgia was effectively a sanctuary city, and I think it was 56% of them said they had no idea. And I don't think the University of Georgia is alone. You consider, you consider the liberal bastion that is the university campus these days, and honestly at this point I wonder if parents are now going to be much more cautious about where they send their kids to school. They should have been cautious all along, but this has got to heighten that, don't you think?
Well, I think several things need to happen. It's a great school. It's not the university's fault. But what needs to happen is those local officials, they should have already resigned. If they would have had an ounce of honor to them and dignity, they would have already resigned. And we need to fix this on the state level. The ones that we know that are out there operating, they don't need any funds. I don't care what happens. They need to be cut off until they realize that we are not going to put up with sanctuary cities. We've got a lot of things that are going on at the national level too. We got Mayorkas. We just impeached, and if I were him, I wouldn't leave the house without signing a resignation letter. I don't see how you get up in the morning and act like you're doing your job when it's as bad as it is.
I know, it's incredible to see, and something that I saw that was also incredible was Senator Chuck Schumer, and he was giving a press conference, and I heard a piece of what he was saying, and he said something about the devastation and the dire situation on the border. And I thought to myself, wow, maybe there are some Democrats in the Senate and in the House who are actually concerned about what's flooding across our southern border. And then I found out that he was actually talking about the border of Ukraine. I know that H.R. 2 is a model bill. It would do a lot to fix the border, but it's sitting over in the Senate. They considered this quote-unquote border deal 3 weeks ago, which really was just a foreign aid package. What can Republicans do before November to actually effectuate some change?
We can continue to put light on the fact that we sent a border bill over there, H.R. 2, over 290 days ago. And, McConnell's got some blame on this, too. Why has he not been standing up screaming? You never hear anything out of the Senate when we send things over there. But yet they want to act like they're going to jam us with stuff that doesn't have anything to do with borders. And so we need to make sure that they take up this impeachment. We need to make sure that they take up this H.R. 2 and get this thing passed, because Biden, H.R. 2 has all those executive orders in there to go ahead and make them law, and we need to see that passed.
Yeah, well, and speaking of Mitch McConnell, he was completely ineffective with respect to Kate's law, with respect to Kate Steinle. If that had passed, we might not have seen this death take place on Georgia's campus. Sir, I want to switch gears to the job that Speaker Mike Johnson is doing. I know that he had a bit of a honeymoon period, and people were willing to give him some grace, and obviously it was a success for the impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas, but it seems like there are a lot of disgruntled Republicans as far as his job approval. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that he came on and took the gig, and he was behind the eight ball. Now he's probably going to have to make a few shots to get out from behind there. That's the problem now. We're going to go in this week and vote on all those appropriation bills. You don't really, Okay, I'd love it if we do, and we send it over there. But the Senate's not going to take it up. They haven't taken up any appropriations bills yet. But what we need to do is make sure that we cut the snot out of that 2024 as much as we can. We need to already have a budget out today. I don't care what the White House budget looks like. I care about what our budget looks like. If we start working on the appropriation bill, right, and people start getting good grades, that's what I would be doing.
I love that, beat the snot out of them. That is a Southern phrase if I've ever heard one. I wanted to ask you about a headline from Axios that you pointed out is dripping with contempt for everyday Americans. I think sometimes they forget that over half of America is exactly who they are talking about. They said if America were dominated by old, white, election-denying Christians who didn't go to college, Trump would win the general election in a landslide. Is that an effective way for a publication like Axios to win over readers?
Yeah, well, it's a liberal rag, and we know it is. Everybody knows this. It's so partisan. But I will say this, man. I've been with President Trump in Iowa, in New Hampshire, in South Carolina, and it's time to shut this primary down. The American people are speaking in droves, and it's time to move on and just start hammering on this general election. And Nikki Haley needs to go ahead and back out, because the longer she hangs in there, you know, some of these crazies around the world, they think there's hope. And that's not good. We need to rally behind Trump, because we know what his policies are. We know for 100% what he'll do.
Right.
He'll shut down that border with those thugs, drug dealers, and human traffickers.
Yeah, sir, I know that America's military is something that is near and dear to your heart. Speaking of President Trump and his effective policies, and Georgia is home to, I think, 13 military bases. You got Fort Benning, Fort Stewart, Fort Gillum, a number, I think about six or seven Army bases, and the Army announced that they are cutting 24,000 recruits. Speaking of the effectiveness of President Trump and the ineffectiveness of this administration with respect to our military, is America in trouble?
Well, I mean, it certainly doesn't help us when our recruiting is down so far. You know, it's just a multitude of problems that we see out there. It's not just the fact that border, we're getting invaded over. And every time we turn around, there's a different piece of the puzzle as to why these people are just pouring in here, whether it's NGOs, whether it's the cartels controlling both sides of the border. But there are other issues out here that it's just every day, man. We look up, and there's something else that you got to hammer back down. This woke military junk has got to stop. We need people that are going to go out there and they're going to teach to fight, not people that are going to cower in the corner and wonder what pronoun they want to be called.
That's right. That's right. And my concern is that there are generations to come who are now going to see this wokeness, and it's going to affect 10, 20 years down the road. Congressman Mike Collins, we love having you on for many reasons, but one of the reasons I love having you on is your Southern style of telling the truth. We appreciate you being here, sir. We'll have you back on again very soon, and we're going to be right back after these commercial messages.
It's John Solomon from Just the News, No Noise. Today, I want to shine the light on AMAC, an organization that is dedicated to America's seniors, but also vital for conservatives of all ages. AMAC stands out because they advocate for senior issues, but they also push for conservative common sense values. That affects all of us. By joining AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens, you're not just supporting our senior citizens, you're part of a movement defending our freedoms and securing our nation's future. Moreover, an AMAC membership brings you exclusive benefits like discounts on travel, dining, and entertainment, special insurance rates. Regardless of your age, if you're driven to preserve freedom, AMAC will welcome you with open arms. I'm a 5-year member. You should be too. This is about uniting youthful vigor with the wisdom of experience in our quest for conservative principles. Now sign up today at amac.us/justnews. That's amac.us/justnews. For a limited time, you're going to get a free gift membership for someone who shares your love for our great nation. Now don't miss out on this chance to make a difference with AMAC. Join today, amac.us/justnews, and extend the invitation to a friend or family member for free. Welcome back, America. The ongoing left-wing push for public schools to allow biological males to compete in girls' sports or use the girls' bathroom continues to incite conservative pushback. On Friday, Oklahoma State Superintendent of Public Instruction Ryan Walters made headlines after he published a letter that he wrote to Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona. And Superintendent Walters is lucky, and we're lucky to have him joining us today. Thank you, sir, for having you here.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be on.
So tell us a little bit about this letter. We covered this on Just the News. There is a really remarkable message that you sent to the U.S. Education Secretary.
Well, let me say, first of all, the Biden administration has been dedicated to transgender ideology in our schools. So we've seen it yet again of, states like mine, Oklahoma. We passed the Save Women's Sports bill that keeps boys out of girls' sports. We passed bills to keep boys out of the girls' bathrooms. But what does the Biden administration do? Well, we're going to weaponize the federal Department of Education to force states to allow boys and girls' bathrooms, boys and girls' sports, and push this gender ideology on your kids. So I sent the Secretary of Education for Joe Biden a letter, and I really told him two things. First of all, if you move forward with this rule that completely overhauls Title IX and turns it upside down and applies to transgenderism, number one, we will not follow it. So it's not going to happen here in Oklahoma. So we'll get that straight from the beginning. We're not going to do it. Number two, by the way, the federal Department of Education should not exist. There's really no legal basis to have a Department of Education underneath our Constitution. So number one, we're not going to do the law, the rule change. Number two, we're not going to continue to allow this administration, this Department of Education, to weaponize itself against students, parents, and families.
Yeah.
Amazing. Mr. Superintendent, I wanted to ask you, Oklahoma is doing a fantastic job with this. There are other states like Tennessee who yesterday their state house passed a bill banning pride flags in classrooms. Now, the devil's advocate would say that that's a violation of free speech. However, this is within the confines of a classroom. This is a teacher who has impressionable young children. And I would say that I think this is an important step, because even if you ban the topics of conversation, you still have that flag there that represents something that could be a conversation starter outside of school. What say you?
Yes, we're working on some of this in our state as well. You've seen teachers come in with their pride flags and really push this on students. We've even seen videos online of teachers telling kids they should pledge allegiance to the pride flag. Think about how outrageous that is. As a teacher, you're entrusted with young people. You're entrusted by parents to educate, not indoctrinate. And so there's really no place in it. What we've seen is radical leftists masquerading as teachers, pushing this ideology on our kids. And again, it comes down from the Federal Department of Education, its partnership with these radical woke teachers unions to weaponize the classroom politically. And the reality is teachers should not be pushing an ideology on kids. The kids should be understanding about American greatness in the classroom, American history. They should be able to have those kind of conversations around math, science, and understanding what they read. But what we've continued to see in our country is an education system that teaches kids to hate their country and teaches kids to hate their own family. And this is where we see one of the fundamental issues in our country is the breakdown of the family. Instead of undermining family values in our schools, what we should be doing is teaching kids that, hey, you need your mom and dad. We want your mom and dad to be more included in your education. And everything we do, we're going to ensure that your mom and dad know about it. We're going to have transparency. We want them included. We know the family is the basic building block of society. And instead of allowing the teachers' unions to break it down, we should be supporting it in our schools.
Yeah, so many heads are probably shaking in the audience, and that's a message we need in our state, too. I want to turn to something that I think you have led the way on, and that is the influence that foreign powers are now beginning to inject into the U.S. education system, particularly China. They seem to have two advocates. Sometimes it's the school district, like you found in Tulsa. Sometimes it's the teachers union kind of doing the work for them. Tell us how important it is to root out these foreign efforts to influence our ability to educate our children.
Yeah, great question. Great question. So what we've seen in schools is you have a teachers union that pushes radical left-wing ideology, a Department of Education that pushes a left-wing ideology. Both of these left-wing ideologies are way outside of common sense. Then you have foreign governments that have been able to push themselves into our schools, and China is the worst offender at this. And again, I want to show some intentionality here from the Biden administration. President Trump ended the Confucius Institutes in America. These Communist Party Chinese plants in our college system and our K-12 system. President Trump ended that. Joe Biden brought them back. And so what you've seen is a partnership with Joe Biden and the communist regimes of other countries to say, yeah, we're fine with you coming in and teaching our kids communism. We're fine with you undermining American values. And this is what President Trump did such a wonderful job of, and why we've got to have him back. he put back an emphasis on our kids are going to understand American greatness. He's called the country, he wants to make America great again. He also understood that our students have to understand what made America great in the first place. And that is such a core function of our schools that we have lost in education. Our kids have to understand American values, American history, what makes America great, and they've got to follow that calling as citizens of this country to keep us. Benjamin Franklin said, we're a republic if you can keep it. And it is up to our schools and our education system to make sure our kids understand that message.
Well, that's important.
Before we go, sir, I think that there is a real timeline concern, especially if you consider the musings of someone like Yuri Bezmenov in the 1980s and the influence, KGB-style influence in America's schools. We are decades beyond that. That is how long it has taken them to sow those roots, to see the fruits of what they have been trying to infect America with. I'm worried that the timeline looks the same as it did from where we started. Is it going to be another 30, 40 years before we can reverse this?
Well, that's an outstanding point. You're exactly right. The thing that we've got to understand is the left has been playing a long game here. They controlled our higher ed institutions. They controlled all the trainings our teachers had. They now control K-12 education, and with their unions and the federal government, they have been embedding this indoctrination. We don't have 30 or 40 years. This has to be a sense of urgency. That's why here in Oklahoma, we have had an incredibly aggressive agenda on education reform to move our schools back. It's why it's essential that President Trump is elected and Joe Biden, who frankly, in partnering with foreign countries, is traitorous. I mean, that this administration has been willing to do that to undermine our country and our schools. President Trump has to get back in the White House. We've got to get education reform going. This country doesn't have 30 or 40 years on this trajectory. So while the left has played the long game and has us in this situation, decline is a choice. If we choose President Trump and the path to make America great again, we can get our country back on the right track. We have incredible families. We have incredible values, but we've got to get back to those values and that foundation.
Yes, sir. Real quickly, 30 seconds. You had a very powerful op-ed. The border has a profound effect on public education. Your top line?
President Biden has willingly opened up the border. It is causing this nation tremendous turmoil, but it's causing tremendous turmoil in our school system. Our schools are being overrun with illegal immigrants. They're being overrun with fentanyl. We literally have kids dying from fentanyl, and President Biden wants to keep the border open to bring his voting bloc into this country and win elections. It is awful. It is terrible. It's traitorous. I mean, what we're seeing from this president, he should be shutting down the border and protecting Americans. There should be no compromise from Republicans on that. Shut down the border.
Yeah, clear message and a clear consequence in the school system. You did a great job in that op-ed. Mr. Superintendent, always an honor to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with more important discussion right after these messages. Welcome back, America. Over the course of the last year, Amanda and I have been able to show you so many amazing songs, movies, and products that we were able to talk about with the creator or owner themselves. And this segment is no different tonight. Joe and Tracy Rumpke grew up hunting and shooting firearms, and while muzzleloader season isn't for everyone, the company and product they created can be for everyone, and it can help save lives. That's why I'm so excited about this. I purchased several chamber and barrel flags, and I want you to have the opportunity to do the same. Joining us right now is the owner of Muzlstik, Joe Rumpke, who joins us for this very special sponsored segment. Joe, great to have you on the show for the first time.
Thank you, John.
You have done something remarkable, and I think just your story, you're in the waste business, you're a Second Amendment lover, and somehow you found a way to merge the two into this incredible product. Could you just tell us the birth story of Muzlstik?
Well, what happened is I hunt in my backyard, muzzleload hunt. Come in, if I didn't get anything, I just take the cap out and put it away because I'm planning on going back out again. So I'm not going to unload it. I thought, my son might come over and decide he's going to hunt in my backyard. So I wanted to let him know it was still loaded. So I took a stick, put it in there with a little sign on top of it, loaded. Well, with that, my son that's 19 right now was only 10. He came walking in, and it's an old gun safe with the glass doors on it. My son gave it to me, actually, and I'll never get rid of it. But anyway, my younger son saw that, and he come upstairs, and he said, "Dad, is that gun still really loaded?" I said, "Well, yes, it is." my wife and I looked at each other, and it was like an moment. It's like, it worked. So I talked to my other son about it, and he said, you ought to see about patenting that. And we did, and the lawyer kind of laughed me off. He said, oh, that's so simple. Somebody had to think about it. Well, no one did. So we started pushing the loaded T-stick for muzzle loaders, because old school guys, they shove the ramrod down in there. They got a little notch. Well, that means the gun's loaded. Well, my ramrod's got a lot of notches on it. And if somebody doesn't know which one's which, they're not going to know. So this way, it actually spells out what's going on with a gun, loaded or unloaded. With that, we started trying to market it. And people was telling us about chamber flags, which I've never heard of before, but people on the East Coast or West Coast knew about it, and they were educating me on it. So we kind of changed directions a little bit. And then we thought, all these people that have loaded guns in the house, which they don't have locked up, which outnumber the people that have them locked up. If you're going to have a loaded gun in your house for protection, what good is it if it's got a lock on it where you got to find a key or unlock it in a rush? First of all, your adrenaline's going crazy, and you probably won't be able to unlock it. So with this, we came up with a loaded, and then the unloaded, you slide it into the chamber, which totally clears out the chamber. You drop your magazine, clear out your chamber, slide that into the chamber, and there's no way it'll go. It comes out of battery. There's no way it'll ever go off. But it's really easy. You can slide a magazine in there quick, pull that out, and put one in. Now, if you want, you just take a loaded one. If you've got them in a gun safe, which I've got loaded and loaded, in my gun safe, mine's loaded, my wife is usually not. So at nighttime, I could reach in there and grab a gun and know which one's loaded or not loaded because of the flag, because the loaded ones are usually bigger. Now, we've got a smaller one we use for a smaller caliber gun, for like a 9mm and down, that is marked loaded, but that goes into the end of the barrel. The unloaded one goes into the chamber. So it's easy to identify in the dark or whatever. It's just, it's simple, it's easy. I mean, it's a visual, and someone doesn't even know anything about guns, they can at least read that it's loaded or unloaded, or over 50% of the people, I'd say probably 60 or 70% of the people that have guns have loaded guns that aren't locked up in drawers, on shelves, or what have you. Someone opens a drawer up, sees his gun in a drawer, and it's got a sign on it saying it's loaded. Well, they know it's loaded, not to pick it up. You get these people that say, well, all my guns are loaded. Everybody knows my guns are loaded. You know what? That's a bunch of BS, because there's always someone out there that doesn't know, and you hear about it every day. Just in our hometown here, some kid, 16-year-old, got shot in the head. Luckily, it wasn't a fatal shot, because he was in his room messing around with a gun that was unloaded. You know, what more can you say? For less than a cup of coffee, you can stop all this.
It's such a brilliant idea, Joe.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's a no-brainer.
I mean, one of the things I love so much about this is something you highlighted. You know, usually the term rudimentary is a pejorative, but I love the rudimentary aspect of this because it makes it so easy. And if it saves just one life, that makes this whole concept worth it, doesn't it?
That's what it's all about. You know, I'm way over my head on this with money-wise. I'm not making any money off of it, but it's the right thing to do, you know, and that's what's important. You know, I've fortunate enough, I've made my money elsewhere, and I'm able to do this now, and it's, I don't know, it's kind of like a calling to me, I guess, educating people, and I'm enjoying it. The people I meet, I hear all these different stories. Muzzle loaders. I've got a friend that would go to flea markets and garage sales buying antique guns, muzzle loaders. In one summer, he got a hold of 5 muzzle loaders that was still loaded.
Wow.
At a garage sale. 5 different places.
Wow. Boy, that is a warning sign.
You've got your estate settlements where people die, the kids come in, and they know nothing about a gun. You've got a sign on it saying, okay, this one's loaded. Now what do we do? It just makes sense.
Yeah. Joe, we only got a few seconds left, but I know one of the things you pride yourself on, you talk to gun owners, you're always innovating, you're always making new products, smaller calibers, other things. This is a product that you're just going to keep evolving, right?
Yes, if someone got an idea, I'll move on it. I mean, I want to make it the best product out there.
It's an amazing thing you've done for your country, and all of this is from the recycled plastic from your own business, right?
Well, I can't say it comes from our business, but
Right.
we do use recycled plastic.
Yeah.
And our business does recycle.
Great for conservationists. Just an amazing thing. Folks, Joe has done something special. He set up a site. It's really easy to do. You go to Muzlstik.com, Muzlstik.com. Like he said, it's less than a cup of coffee to save a life. Go get these for you, your friends. They're great gifts, great birthday gifts, great St. Patrick's Day gifts for all of us Irish guys. Joe, what a great honor to have you in the show, and thank you for what you've done for this country, the Second Amendment, and increasing all of our safety with Muzlstik. We're honored to have you on today. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but we'll be right back after this to talk Super Tuesday coming around the corner. And tonight, Michigan. I got some voting there. We'll finish up with that conversation in just a few seconds. Welcome back, America. As you know, the Utah primary is just 1 week from today, and our last guest of this evening knows a lot about how to run a successful campaign in the Salt Lake State. We're joined now by the mayor of Riverton, Utah, who is now running to represent Utah in Washington, D.C. as a member of the U.S. Senate. Mayor Trent Staggs joins us right now. Mr. Mayor, great to have you on. Congratulations on that great CPAC stage speech last week. That was a big deal.
Yeah, thanks. It was quite an honor to be invited there to participate. Really, the only one from Utah, and I thought it was a lot of fun. Great energy, just so good to be surrounded by conservatives, right? By such great conservatives in the country.
Well, they certainly embraced your message, and it was a very powerful moment during the convention. I want to start with the Utah primary. There are two dynamics at work, right? You've got your primary, then you've got Nikki Haley, of course, coming there. You had some sharp words for Ambassador Haley on X yesterday, saying she's coming to Utah to promote her pro-war, anti-free speech agenda. Tell us what you meant by that.
Well, I mean, it's just typified her career, right? I mean, she's always been a neocon. She's a globalist. She's somebody that wants to be able to expand the machinery of war, the military-industrial complex. It's been on full display, whether it's anytime in her role as governor or, more recently being on the board of Boeing. This is what has just exemplified her time in the spotlight, and we can't put up with that. We can no longer do that. I've been pretty outspoken about not supporting Ukraine funding. Enough is enough, I've been saying. And as I've traveled the state of Utah and spoke with other Americans, they're at that point. We're ready to go back to the leadership that President Trump exhibited so well during his 4 years in office. And we need to have that type of leadership, that America first, not the warmongering and the war first type of agenda back in Washington.
Absolutely. I want to stay on that topic of establishment Republicans. Obviously, the seat that you are running to fill, Senator Mitt Romney, a lot of people consider him to be in that camp. But what was amazing last week about your appearance at CPAC, Matt Schlapp said that they were much more exclusive this year about the people who they invited to speak. So congratulations to you, because I think that says a lot about your campaign. But you see leftist media organizations with their hair on fire about how the Republican Party has changed from the Nikki Haleys, from the Mitt Romneys, and the Trump transformation is now complete. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I mean, we are ready. Everybody needs to get behind President Trump. I was the first one to endorse him out here in our great state. Sadly, our governor seems to be more interested in prolonging this primary and inviting Nikki Haley to come on out. Hey, let's get behind President Trump. Not only has he demonstrated how great he was as a president, but he's polling right now at 80% or higher in many of the polls that I've seen. So it's time to consolidate our resources, put everything around President Trump so that we can beat Joe Biden. That should be the number one goal. It should be shared amongst all Republicans, because it has been disastrous. And that's something that I spoke about in my speech. It is literally, we're at the brink, and we've got a guy who is cognitively impaired, who's licking an ice cream cone while America is quite literally burning. And we need to get beyond that. We got to get back to where we were under President Trump and have that kind of leadership again.
Mr. Mayor, you have a unique perspective running a city right now, running for national office. There is a very significant impact of illegal immigration that Joe Biden has imposed on this country. From your small community to all those other communities where we're losing people like Lake and Riley and these tragic murders, what is the impact? How far has it filtered down into everyday cities in America?
Well, you've heard the expression that every state is now a border state, and sadly that's true, and every community has been impacted. I know that when I met with ICE here in Salt Lake City, and they documented the amount of cases, I mean, well over 100,000 cases that they are just working within our state. There are just far too many incidents of known criminal behavior of MS-13 gang members or people that have committed serious crime in the countries of their origin that are now here. We have to be able to get these people out of our country. They shouldn't have been allowed to come in the first place. It's just a tragedy that we have so many people in the Senate that are concerned more with the borders of Ukraine than they are of our own country. That has to stop. We need people in Washington that care about everyday Americans and that will go ahead and fight for everyday Americans and put America first. And that starts at the border. We have to be able to get this border under control. It's not rocket science. It could be done instantly. This Biden administration and the Secretary Mayorkas, who rightfully needs to be impeached, they just don't want to do it. And sadly, we have folks like Mitt Romney that not only confirmed Mayorkas, but have also been very, very supportive of Biden and his policies. And that has to stop. We need America First patriots in office, in D.C., representing us all the way down. I mean, from the president, we need President Trump back in office, but we need a good cadre of America First senators and congressmen and women that are going to push forward this America First agenda and get us back on track, because we are a country derailed at this point.
Yeah.
I think so many people agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to ask, this week you've got both President Biden and Donald Trump heading down to the border. Joe Biden polls poorly in every single category. You look at his overall approval numbers and they are abysmal. But when you look at those crosstabs, those subcategories, he is the worst as far as approval on the border. Heading to the border this week seems to me that it might be a last-ditch effort to try to increase his polling, at least in that category. But do you think it's too little too late?
Well, I do. He's demonstrated now for over 3 years his incompetence at the border. And, some people even have gone so far as to say that it is by design. There is absolutely no reason why he couldn't be enforcing the same policies that were so successfully done under President Trump. He claims that he needed to have this border bill passed, and it was just a smokescreen and a fig leaf of a bill to push a bunch of money to Ukraine. I mean, the fact of the matter is, President Biden undid everything that President Trump had done and was doing successfully, whether that be the Remain in Mexico policies, the border wall, signaling to other nations that we are not just going to allow you to run roughshod over our laws and just come into this country free will. We need to be able to stand up again to that. Sadly, President Biden, he's demonstrated.
Looks like we may have
He's President Trump.
Mr. Mayor, it is always an honor to have you on the show. We're going to be watching closely in Utah next week and all throughout the spring and summer with your great campaign. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great honor. All right. Amanda, we just got a few seconds left before we hand things off to our good friend Grant Stinchfeld. Hunter Biden tomorrow, what are you looking for?
Oh, boy. I don't know if there will necessarily be any bombshells, because I think that he's going to be, I wouldn't say he's going to lie or not be transparent. I think he's probably just going to try to be protective and economical with his speech. But we've already learned so much that they have discovered and uncovered, especially through bank documents. I think that we will see solidification of a lot of what they've already found.
Yeah. I think Congressman Lee Zeldin had a great idea. Republicans bring the receipts tomorrow, confront him with his own evidence. I think that could be the most effective tool they'll have tomorrow, which there'll be some shenanigans for sure. All right, folks, we are very lucky. Stay here tonight. Real America's Voice got you covered with the very important Michigan primary. And of course, for the next hour, you're in the very good hands of our good friend, Grant Stinchfeld. You have a good